One day, about a year ago, I had a very creepy dream. In it, I found myself near my house, and it was spring. The snow hadn't melted from the mountains yet, and there were still patches of it here and there in our village. I decided to take a walk and, as I often do in real life, headed toward the mountains. The fresh air, the scent of pine trees, all of it usually calmed me. But this time, everything felt entirely different. I walked slowly among the pine trees, breathing in the cool spring air, when something suddenly caught my attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. Turning my head, I saw a figure standing not far away, watching me intently. My heart began to pound faster. It was a person, but they looked strange, taller than me, with a disheveled appearance. His face was covered in stubble, his hair unkempt, and his clothes tattered and dirty. But the most frightening thing about him was his eyes. They burned with an unusual glow that seemed to pierce right through me. He began to move toward me slowly. I froze in fear, my legs refusing to obey. But the instinct to survive took over, and I bolted toward the village, heading for my house, the only place that could offer me protection. Running swiftly among the pine trees, feeling the ground give way slightly beneath my feet, I finally reached home. Out of breath, I burst inside, locked the door, and collapsed onto the couch, trying to calm myself. But peace was nowhere to be found. Outside the window, a dark figure began to appear. It circled the house slowly and menacingly, as if it was waiting for something. Fear gripped me, and my heart pounded in my chest so loudly it felt like even this creature could hear it. What did it want? Why me? Suddenly, the figure came closer and began peering through the windows. I saw it trying to look inside, searching for me. Its movements were slow but deliberate. Then it started pounding on the door, as if trying to break in. Fear overwhelmed me completely. This isn't a forest spirit, I thought. A forest spirit wouldn't chase me like this. So what was it? Realizing I couldn't last much longer, I decided to act. In the living room, there was a window I could open. Summoning all my courage, I climbed through it and carefully made my way outside, trying not to attract the attention of this mysterious pursuer. At first, it seemed like the plan was working. The creature didn't notice me. I quietly crept toward the fence, separating our yard from the neighbors, and started climbing over it. But this was a risky move. In the process, my movement caught the creature's attention. I saw it stop banging on the door and turn its head in my direction. Its eyes, those terrible glowing eyes, locked onto me. It began moving toward me, slowly but purposefully. My fear turned into sheer panic. I ran to the neighbor's door and started banging on it, shouting for help, but the house was silent. No one answered. It felt like my cries echoed into emptiness. Meanwhile, the creature kept advancing, its dark silhouette growing closer and closer. As the distance between us shortened, I felt an icy terror paralyze me. It seemed like it was just moments away from grabbing me. But at the last second, I decided to flee further. Turning around the corner of the house, I sprinted toward the forest. Each step was a struggle, my heart pounding in my chest. Branches grabbed at my clothes, but I didn't stop or look back. Suddenly, I saw an old shed ahead. It looked abandoned, but it was the only shelter I could find. I dashed inside, slammed the door shut, and began searching for something to block it with. The shed was dark, smelling of dampness and rot, but I found a few planks and used them to barricade the door. At that moment, I heard someone approaching. The footsteps were heavy but deliberate, and again that gaze, I felt it even though I couldn't see it. The pounding on the shed door made me hold my breath. This creature knew I was inside. It began pushing against the door, but the planks held for now. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make myself invisible. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, and the pounding and attempts to break in grew stronger. And then I noticed a hatch in the corner of the shed. It probably led to a cellar or some kind of hiding place. Without thinking, I opened it and climbed down. It was dark and damp, but at least I was hidden from the creature. I sat in the corner, hugging my knees, trying to calm myself. Time passed slowly, but eventually I stopped hearing sounds outside. Maybe it had left? Gathering my courage, I decided to leave my hiding spot. Climbing out of the hatch, I saw the shed was empty and the door was still barricaded. Outside, dawn was breaking. Sunlight filtered through the trees, offering a glimmer of hope. I stepped out of the shed and ran toward the village, not stopping until I reached my house. When I woke up, the dream left me feeling shattered and terrified. Everything had been so vivid that I couldn't shake it off for a long time. What was it? Was it just my imagination playing tricks on me, or was it something more? Since then, I've avoided walking alone in the mountains, especially in spring. That dream still haunts me, reminding me that fear can find us even in the places we least expect it. Story number 2. 2 years ago, I had a strange and terrifying dream. In it, I found myself in a city apartment, even though I live in a village. The apartment looked unusual. It was like my home, but at the same time, it felt foreign. It was my house, but not quite. It was as if someone had copied it and added strange, unfamiliar details. I was lying on the bed, listening to music, trying to relax. But the calmness was deceptive. For some reason, I got up and went to the kitchen. In the kitchen, I approached the window and looked outside. Below, there was a children's playground, bright slides, swings, and climbing frames. Everything looked ordinary, but something immediately seemed off. My eyes lingered on the swings. They were moving on their own, as if someone had just pushed them. It was daytime, and there was no wind. A cold chill ran down my spine. Something about it felt unnatural. Why were they swinging? Who had pushed them? And why the swings? I felt an inexplicable unease and left the kitchen, heading back to the bedroom. But I couldn't shake the image of the swings. They kept swinging in my mind like a persistent, unsettling memory. After some time, I decided to get dressed and go outside. When I went downstairs, I looked at the swings again. They were still moving, and now even more vigorously. I froze for a few seconds, feeling fear growing inside me. The street was completely empty. No people, no sounds, not even a single face in the windows of the nearby buildings. Yet the swings continued to sway back and forth, back and forth. Summoning my courage, I approached them. The closer I got, the harder they swung, as if some invisible force had set them in motion. My heart pounded. Step by step, the anxiety within me grew stronger. With each step, I felt a strange, invisible pressure, as if someone unseen was watching me. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore and yelled out, "Where are you? What is this all about?" No one answered. The swings only began to swing even more violently, as if mocking me. I stood frozen until the fear became unbearable. Then I turned and ran back to the building, rushing up the stairs and slamming the apartment door shut behind me. But the feeling of safety didn't return. The apartment now felt alien to me. The air was heavy, the light was dim. It was as if something unseen had invaded my home. I walked deeper into the apartment, and that's when I saw him, a small boy. His tear-filled eyes stared at me, his expression a mix of fear and anger. Suddenly, he ran straight at me. Instinctively, I dodged, but when I turned back, he was gone. He had vanished, as if he'd never been there. But the nightmare wasn't over. I heard a strange whistling sound, and then, out of nowhere, kitchen knives started flying through the air. They whizzed past me, and I barely managed to duck behind the couch. Panic overwhelmed me, but I ran into the bedroom, deciding to hide under the bed. In the darkness, I pressed myself to the floor, trying to calm down. That's when I noticed small, bare feet standing in the doorway of the bedroom. My heart nearly stopped. The boy slowly walked around the room, rummaging through my belongings as if he were looking for something. His movements were eerily silent, and the stillness around him made it even more terrifying. Then he stopped. I could feel him leaning down and looking under the bed. Our eyes met, and his gaze filled with rage again. He reached for me, but couldn't quite grab me. Frustrated, he climbed onto the bed and began jumping on it. The mattress thudded with each jump, hitting my head as I lay beneath it. Every bounce sent waves of fear through me. I was about to crawl out when suddenly I felt cold, hard hands grab my legs. Something began pulling me out from under the bed. Pure terror gripped me, and I tried to scream and fight back, but then everything disappeared. I woke up in my bed, my heart racing and cold sweat covering my face.